All right.
We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome 80-20 baseball coaches. Always great to be here for our weekly check-in where we continue to grow, get stronger and better as coaches and even parents. In fact, I've received a few emails recently from listeners sharing their thanks for the podcast, for not just helping them be better coaches. Of course, that's our main focus, being better youth baseball coaches. But almost everything we discuss on this podcast can make us better coaches for any sport. If you're a teacher, a manager, an instructor, it will help you in that area, absolutely. And a couple of the recent emails I received that shared a thanks for the podcast, those listeners that wrote those emails also were thankful for learning how to be better parents. From what we talk about here, that makes sense that most of it goes hand in hand, coaching, parenting, managing, leading, leadership across all those roles, which is pretty cool. So you come here each week and we become better youth baseball coaches, but some of you or many of you might coach another sport in the off season or the baseball off season, and this podcast will help you there. Some of you might be managers, teachers, have a leadership role. This will help you there. And definitely in that role of parenting. And when you think about where we should try or focus most of our energy on improvement, on growth, on personal development, where we should be trying to grow the fastest, shouldn't the areas that involve our kids or players, for those of us coaching a team, shouldn't that area be prioritized the most? In other words, the window that we have our kids as kids is brief. We all know this. But the rest of our life could very well be 40 or 50 years or more. But our kids are going to leave the nest in 12 years, 10 years. For some of you, 5 years. You're going to blink and they'll be gone. While I definitely think it's important to grow and learn and focus on personal development, professional development in different areas, like your fitness or your job, your business, your company, the area with the shortest window, the tightest window that has the greatest impact on our sense of satisfaction, our sense of responsibility, the area that we are needed the most is as a parent. So I thought about this recently, and I'm big on priorities, of course. All of you are big on prioritizing the right things. That's why you're here. 80-20 baseball, the 80-20 rule, the 80-20 principle is simply a quantitative way or a numerical way of expressing priorities and what things will have the biggest impact in our life, our family, with our kids, in our jobs, in our business, with our health. We can go on and on with that 80-20 rule. It's everywhere. So I was thinking about this recently, and I wanted to share that thought about prioritizing the right things at the right times and showing up here each week to learn to be a better coach, youth coach, but also we tie this in with being a better parent, improving our parenting skills, our toolbox. When we think about how tight of a window we have to get better at this, and it will have a lifelong effect, if not generation after generation moving forward, an effect on the generations to come in our families. Of course, we're not trying to be perfect parents. Well, we are, but we know we're not going to be perfect, but we're trying to be better parents, better coaches, and that's why you check in each week here for our weekly get-together. Speaking of kids, players, I want to say happy Thanksgiving to all of you. This episode comes out Tuesday, a few days before Thanksgiving, and I'm thankful to be a part of the 80-20 baseball coaching community. When I get those emails from you expressing your thanks, that makes me even more grateful to be a part of the 80-20 baseball coaching community. Now, while we don't have a membership or we're not part of an exclusive club here, those of you that join up each week, you're part of our community, the 80-20 baseball community, and our mission of being better coaches, better parents, better people by prioritizing the big needle movers first and then working from there. Speaking of being thankful, I know that our players, our kids, are thankful for us as coaches, as parents, especially as we prioritize being a better version of ourselves as a coach or a parent. And speaking of players, kids, I know that our players, our kids are thankful for us as coaches. They're thankful for us as parents, especially as we prioritize being a better version of ourselves as a parent and as a coach. Now, that thanks may not take place today. That gratitude may not be fully realized today, this year, or this season. Great coaches and really good parents often aren't fully appreciated until years later, which makes perfect sense since great coaches who coach the right things in the right ways prioritize big picture improvement and development, long-term success, having our players be successful adults down the road, and coaches that are prioritizing the wrong things may be liked a little more by some kids in the moment because they're making them happy, that instant gratification. But 5 years, 10 years, 30 years from now, they won't have nearly the same appreciation. So I'm thankful for all of you. Just know that our players, our kids are thankful for us. They may not always express it. And if you're doing it really well, that gratitude, that thankfulness might not fully come to the surface or be fully expressed until years later. And that's all right. We'll keep getting better. We'll keep doing the right things. Speaking of getting better, let's dive into this week's episode. This is the week of Thanksgiving. So the next couple episodes this week and next will be a little bit shorter than normal because I'll be spending quite a bit of time, hopefully with my family here. And I'm actually out of town over in Cali this week. So I don't have my typical office studio set up. But hey, I told myself I'm going to bring a good quality episode each week for all of you. So with that said, let's dive into this week's episode. This episode will include a quote of the week. We'll talk about some Rapsodo data for youth baseball players, such as exit velocities off of a tee, a soft toss, and batting practice exit velocity averages. And we'll start our 5-part series titled The Most Common Mistakes Youth Coaches Make and How to Avoid Making Them. Today we'll do part 1. The title of today's part 1 will be Coaching Approach and Philosophy. So I took each part of the series, broke it into 5 parts, and tried to tie them in with an overarching theme. So today we'll talk coaching approach and philosophy and some of the most common mistakes youth coaches make and how to avoid making them. So I'm excited about this 5-part series that'll be spread out over 5 episodes. Also have a couple interviews scheduled for the near future. I have one scheduled to be recorded in a couple weeks. We are going to discuss specifics for team culture and more specifically, how to make parents of the players of your team allies rather than opponents. I'm going to have somebody who's an expert in this area come on and share out, and in fact has a book coming out in the next few months that discusses this very topic of getting parents to be allies, to work on our side, to work together cohesively and successfully rather than, butting heads with parents all season long, which is an area that we should prioritize if we really want to have a successful season. Quote of the week. This is by Arnold Glasow. Not sure if I'm saying that last name perfectly, but Arnold Glasow said, quote, "A good leader takes a little more than his or her share of blame and a little less than his or her share of credit." End quote. I'm going to change the word leader to coach. A good coach takes a little more than his or her share of blame and a little less of his or her share of the credit. End quote. Same with parents. You could say a good parent takes a little more than their share of blame and a little less of their share of the credit, end quote. Now, if your team is doing great and you're having a great season or you're winning a lot of games or everything's rocking and rolling, this quote would lead us or guide us to being more humble towards the team success or with regard to team success, knowing that the players and there's other things that are influencing that success. And in a lot of ways and in big ways outside of what we're doing as the coach or as the coaching staff. And a good leader also takes more than his or her share of the blame. And this is a good one. This I think is more internal than anything. I know there's a lot of talk about coaches starting off their coaches talk, their team talk with, all right, team, I take all the blame or I apologize. And I'm not against that, but I think it should be more internally. The leader looks at a mistake instead of going, oh, that kid messed up. It's how could I have coached that better? Or our team was terrible today. Our team left the dugout a mess. Those kids, they really need. Instead of looking at it like that, you say, man, we did not play good on defense today. Our infield was terrible. We didn't know where to go with the ball. We left that dugout a mess. I had players yelling at the umpire, disrespecting the umpire or the other team. Our reaction should be, and what we should work to using this quote is saying, okay, I should take a little more of the blame for that. Then we can internally say to ourselves, kind of work through it in our own thoughts. And this quote leads us to the paradigm of looking at it through the lens of how could I have done better? What can I improve? How can I coach these players up better in these areas? What did I mess up on as a coach that I need to fix or improve upon? So I like how this quote guides us down the path of accepting more blame. Again, I don't think this should be something we're always verbalizing and it's always our fault as a coach and always apologizing to our players. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that from time to time. But if your players hear you apologizing every practice, every game, all the time, I think you're going to erode some of that trust and buy-in. Now, sparingly, it's effective, but 100% of the time, it should be us looking at the mistakes or the errors of our team and asking ourselves, what can I do better? How can I do better as a coach to improve those areas, those things, or to help improve those areas? How can I better support? How can I better prepare my team? How can I better prepare my players, my kid, for that situation next time? And when you have a lot of success, you dish out a lot more of the praise and credit to the team. So I thought this quote was really good when it comes to shaping a better, higher quality paradigm for coaches, for parents, etc. All right, now, before I dive into the Rapsodo data that I found that was very interesting by Coach Royce Carlton. He's a head coach at Shelbyville High School in Indiana, or at least at the time of the video that I found on the ABCA website, the American Baseball Coaches Association website. Before I get into this Rapsodo data that I thought was interesting in terms of how do I know if my player or our players are hitting the ball hard or not? And we'll get into that in just a second. Before I do, I want to just remind you, if you haven't already, head over to 80/20 Baseball. It's about a 20 or 30-minute read. And I promise after reading that, you'll have a much clearer understanding of what it takes or what's necessary, the necessary parts, ingredients to building great drills. It talks about the 8 parts, the 8 ingredients that great drills have. Now, for those of you that have already gone over and got that drill design guide emailed to you, and I know there's 15 of you in the last week that got it, for those of you that have already read it, keep in mind those 8 ingredients, those 8 parts, not all of them need to be in every single drill, but you're trying to get as many of those as you can. Now, the things like safety, that ingredient, that should be there. And definitely there's a couple more that should be prioritized, but at least you'll know, and at least you know by reading it or have had read it, what is necessary for a great drill. So head over to 8020baseball.com. It's right there on the homepage. You won't get spam email. I'm not sharing your email with anybody. Just go over there, put your email in, first name, and it'll get sent to you. And this is a great time of year to spend the time to improve your understanding, give you clarity. It's crystal clear what is needed, and the 80/20 Baseball Drill Design Guide will give you that. So I was watching a video on the ABCA website. They have a whole collection of videos, hundreds of videos. And while I used to go to the ABCA coaching conventions every year, I found myself going to those and being a little bit of an outlier. And I found that a lot of the coaches go there to network. Hey, that's great. Got nothing wrong with that. But I wanted to go there and catch every single speaker. And I wanted to take notes and I wanted to listen and learn. So it was less about meeting new people and building out my Rolodex, and it was more about becoming a better coach. And so when the ABCA started putting the videos of every single speaker, and these are high quality videos, well done videos, well produced, on their website, I don't have to leave my family for 4 days all the way across the country. I can get all the information on my laptop. So this one I was watching the other day by Royce Carlton, head coach, Shelbyville High School in Indiana. He was sharing out, and their program over there is big on Rapsodo, using Rapsodo, the technology, the Rapsodo machine. Some of you, many of you, probably familiar with that. Something that youth programs don't typically have. You'll find them at training facilities, baseball facilities might have these or this type of technology. I'm a big fan of the Rapsodo. I think high schools should definitely have this built into their budget, their fundraising. But for youth baseball, what I wanted to share for youth coaches, and the lowest it went was 12-year-olds and 13 and 14. So those middle school years. I just want to share with you something I thought was interesting to know if, and this is something you can assess a little easier, like the ball off the bat. The prices of radar guns have come down quite a bit. Maybe you can find somebody who has a radar gun so you can get the exit velocity from your hitters. So these exit velocity averages that Coach Carlton shared out coming from the Rapsodo data, a 12-year-old hitter, average exit velocity, the average velocity of the ball being hit off the bat for a 12-year-old is 60 miles an hour. The average velocity off of a tee is 58 miles an hour. So the average 12-year-old, just so you can kind of compare, hey, are my players, is my kid hitting the ball hard or not? The average based off the Rapsodo data is showing that the average exit velocity for a 12-year-old is about 60 miles an hour in batting practice. And the average exit velocity hitting off a tee is about 58 miles an hour. For a 13-year-old, it jumps up to 64 miles per hour on a batting practice pitch. So a hitter hitting a batting practice pitch, the ball coming off the bat, the average is about 64 miles an hour on that hit. Off the tee, 62 miles an hour. And for a 14-year-old, the average batting practice velocity, exit velocity is 68 miles an hour during batting practice, and off a tee, 66 miles per hour. So it goes up about 4 miles per hour each year, according to this data. And then it starts to level off a little bit later on. A professional player, average batting practice exit velocity for a pro player is 86 miles an hour and about 79 miles an hour off a tee. The ages that this data had did not go below 12 years old, but 12, 13, 14, still youth baseball. So I thought that was a good one to kind of go off of there. 12-year-olds should be hitting the ball on average 60 miles an hour in batting practice and off a tee. The tee is probably a little more accurate because the tee takes out the one variable, the pitch, that if thrown harder or softer could definitely impact the exit velocity. So a 12-year-old should be hitting the ball off a tee 58 miles an hour to be average. If you want to know, okay, what's the average a 12-year-old should hit the ball off a tee? You put the ball on the tee, you have a rain or a gun. How hard do they hit it off that tee? If it's over 58 miles an hour, they're above average. Now, I'm not a huge fan of comparing and contrasting, but it is nice to have a kind of a measuring stick, a point to measure and to kind of base where players are at or should be at. Now, improvements may come later, growth may come later, maybe a little delayed. We always got to keep that in mind. But I thought that information was interesting and I saw it. I said, I'm going to share this with the audience. So the average 12-year-old hitting it off a tee, 58 miles an hour, average 13-year-old hitting the ball off the tee should have an exit velocity or average exit velocity of 62 miles an hour. And the average 14-year-old exit velocity off a tee is 66 miles an hour. The average high school exit velocity off a tee is about 77 to 78 miles an hour. The average college velocity, exit velocity off a tee is 80 miles an hour. So if you wanted a measuring stick or a point of measurement to assess if your middle schoolers are hitting the ball hard or not, although at the end of the day, we can tell for the most part when a ball's hit hard or not. But if you wanted to get an average of a bigger group or a bigger size than just your team or your league or your area, there it is. All right, let's get into the last part of this week's episode, part 1 of our 5-part series titled The Most Common Mistakes Youth Coaches Make and How to Avoid Making Them. Part 1, Coaching Approach and Philosophy. Number 1, overcoaching. Overcoaching. We overcoach by providing too much feedback, especially with really young players. The focus should be on getting a ton of quality reps, fast-paced scrimmages, and having fun. So number 1 of part 1, overcoaching. Coaches many times provide too much feedback, especially with young players, and the focus should actually be on creating an environment, a training environment, a practice environment where they get a ton of quality reps. We facilitate fast-paced scrimmages where they get a lot of high-quality game reps and having fun, wanting to come back to play again next season. Number 2, overemphasizing winning. The score of the game shouldn't be the priority. The focus should be on creating a great team culture, having fun there, improving the skills a little each week or a little bit each month. The focus should be on hustling, playing the game right. So the second most common mistake in this category, overemphasizing winning. That makes me think of the book that I mentioned in the past couple episodes about John Wooden. John Wooden never talked about winning. He never talked about winning and very rarely ever talked about the score. And he won more championships than anybody, but he may have talked about winning less than any of his peers. So talking about winning, overemphasizing winning doesn't lead to winning. Taking care of the parts, the pieces, the components that lead to the winning, the building blocks that lead to winning, that build up to winning, that's what we should focus on. Great team culture, improving player skills a little each week and each month. Are the skills of your players getting better each week, each month? As we move through the season, are players hustling? Is our team hustling? Are we playing the game the right way? And having fun. Number 3, not promoting teamwork. Younger players need to learn how crucial it is to work together and support teammates. Coaches should reward team-first attitudes. So a big mistake is not promoting teamwork and not rewarding team-first attitudes, team-first actions. So look to reward players that show team-first attitudes. A simple example of this would be a player taking the glove and the hat of their teammate out to their teammate who ended the inning out on base, on the base paths, and they bring the glove and hat to them so they don't have to come all the way to the dugout and all the way back. Now, that's a simple example of that. Rewarding team-first attitudes would be players that give high amounts of genuine praise and compliments to their peers, to their teammates. So those are a couple examples. And so a big mistake that coaches make is not promoting teamwork. So have a reward system that rewards team-first attitudes and actions. Number 4, this might be the biggest of all of these in this episode. Number 4, taking the game, taking things too seriously. At the end of the day, it is just youth sports. In other words, a youth game will not be known about by anybody outside of the families of those there, and maybe a few of the family members that aren't there, and that's it. 99.9999999, and I could go on with that 9 for about another 5 minutes, % of the people in the world don't know that game ever even happened. The game you're coaching, the game your kids are playing. It's not a big deal, win or lose. And so taking it too seriously is an ego thing, in my opinion. It's also a perspective thing. And so look at it from a 30,000 foot view, not from the field level. Look at it from the big picture. I've made the comment to other coaches coaching against them that I thought were out of line, taking it too seriously. If you've coached at all, you've seen this type of coach. Maybe you've at times been that coach. And I'll say to those coaches, usually I'll walk over to them, or as I'm going to coach first base or third base, I might go by and say, hey, coach, it's a youth baseball game. It's a 10U youth baseball in Anaheim, California on a Tuesday night. Nobody knows this is even happening except everybody here. Look at the crowd. There's 36 people here. All right. This isn't the World Series. We're not getting paid big bucks like college coaches and pro coaches with thousands and thousands of fans, if not millions of fans watching. So don't take it too seriously, especially the winning part of it. What helps that is going back to focusing on the key things, like not overemphasizing winning, focusing on team culture, building skills, focusing on getting your players to hustle and having fun, while also promoting teamwork and a better team first attitude with your players. You focus on those things, it takes your mind away from the scoreboard, which can be a big positive. So, big mistake, taking it too seriously. And I think we should take being a good coach seriously. I think we should take the role of being a coach seriously, because we can have such a great impact. But this is talking about taking the games too seriously, taking winning too seriously. That's what that's alluding to right there. All right, number 5, too much teaching, not enough practice. This ties in with overcoaching, and coaches sometimes spend too much time demonstrating and lecturing. Too much time demonstrating and lecturing. The best learning happens through active practice and repetitions. So it's not about how many reps we can demonstrate, it's how many quality reps the players can get. That doesn't mean we shouldn't demonstrate, but we shouldn't spend too much time demonstrating, and definitely not a lot of time lecturing. I prefer demonstrating over lecturing, but I would prefer, or I think the better coaches prefer active practice and repetitions. But seeing it's a good thing, seeing it done right is a good thing. A way to fast track this is to find those videos that are not that hard to find, showing a player doing what you'd like your players to do in the right way or the correct way or the way you would like them to closely replicate, and then sending that video to their parents and have the kid watch it on an off night so they can watch it away from the field. So when they show up to practice, they know, hey, that video, you watched Bryce Harper do this. You watched JT Realmuto do this. You saw Corey Seager doing this. You watched that video of Greg Maddux that I showed you doing this. Although he's a little outdated, still great pitcher to use as an example, because he went out there, was below average velocity and stuff, but really did some amazing things as a pitcher in terms of locating things that youth players of any ability could try to replicate and utilize. It's hard to replicate Randy Johnson. How many 6'10" players do you have that throw that hard from that angle with that bite on their slider? So too much teaching, not enough practice. A lot of times we spend too much time demonstrating and lecturing. Let's get to the learning through practice, active practice and repetitions, quality reps. So to recap, part 1 of our series, the most common mistakes youth coaches make. So there's 25 mistakes. There's a little overlap on some of these, but there are some subtle differences in all of these. So these are the top 25 mistakes youth coaches make. We're breaking it into a 5-part series, basically a 5x5. So to recap, part 1, coaching approach and philosophy. Most common mistakes: overcoaching, overemphasizing winning, not promoting teamwork, taking the game too seriously, and too much teaching, not enough practice. All right, coaches, next week we'll get to part 2 of our series titled The Most Common Mistakes Youth Coaches Make and How We Can Avoid Them. Next week will be titled Practice Management and Player Developments. We'll dive into the top 5 mistakes made in that category, or those categories: practice management and player development. And if you haven't already, head over to 8020baseball.com. Get that drill design guide. It's right there on the homepage. Boom, sent to you, and you have it. You can have it depending on your internet speed and your typing ability in less than 90 seconds. So head over and get the 80/20 Baseball drill design guide. And until next week, have a nice Thanksgiving. Know that your players are and definitely will be thankful for you and what you're doing as a coach, and your kids will be thankful, are thankful, and will be, continue to be, especially if you're doing it right. They'll definitely continue to be, as the years go on, more thankful for you and what you're doing. I'm thankful for all of you in the 80/20 Baseball coaching community. I look forward to seeing you all back here next week. Until then, hey, take care of your health, except on Thursday. If you're into those big Thanksgiving dinners, get after it. Maybe take a 30-minute walk with your family after, but got to enjoy your Thanksgiving dinner. Got to enjoy that food, those leftovers. But hey, overall, let's take care of our health so we can take care of our families and be that foundation for our families. So go and take care of your families, your close friends, and take this information out to the field. Until next week, adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.